It's the Sports Peninsula podcast. Coming up, we continue our coverage of the 2023 NFL Draft prospect classes as we look at the wide receivers. This year's class is not as star-studded as the previous two seasons, but there's still plenty of talent in this group. The Detroit Lions are likely not in the market now for a receiver, but we will discuss if this group will impact the Lions on draft weekend. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. And welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Jasinski. Drew, it is March 14th, 2023, and we're talking about the wide receiver draft class of the 2023 NFL Draft. And joining me to talk about that and more is Coach Andy Shield, the Marine City Mariners. Coach, how you feeling?
Drew, doing well. Excited to talk about this group. Just agreeing with you in the intro to the episode. Not likely a real high demand, draft concern for the Lions is the wide receiver position. That said, I mean, we do have a potential, opening if DJ Chark was not brought back via free agency. There's no indication that he has left via free agency. However, he is not signed either or re-signed with the team either at this point. So if he were to not be back, I think then that beckons, there's guys making some pretty good coin. It seems like the top free agents are getting an annual salary area, if you break down years and the amount of their contract, to about $20 to $21 million. If you're not a quarterback.
Yeah.
And are we wanting to spend in the top, in the 15 mil range to get a receiver that would be an upgrade? I'm not quite sure what it would take to get Chark back. I'm guessing in and around the $10 million range, probably, maybe thereabouts, 8 to 10 million.
You're probably right.
So if we want to look at it that way, you could potentially get a longer term upgrade and a player that we're going to talk about here very shortly for a lot cheaper price too. So, I would not rule it out at pick 18. As we talked about before we started recording, and that'll be something I think we really can get into next week in our next position. Things are different. They're different today than they were this morning when it comes to Lions draft priorities. So I think some things are there's more things on the table than I think there were before.
I would say this is our fifth draft that we've covered for the Sports Peninsula podcast. And without question, the moves that were made this year in free agency have significantly altered the likely path of this draft for the Detroit Lions. And having said that, Coach, that's because the Lions went out and signed Sutton and Mosley to play cornerback, two starting cornerbacks.
Re-sign Will Harris.
Who's now a
corner.
Yep, Okudah and Okudah's still there. Melifonwu was still at safety. Jerry Jacobs still at corner. So, like we talked off air, I mean, it's now a deep room, potentially pretty loaded room, which is very similar to how they did the receiver position last year. Because last year going into the draft, there was a need. And they addressed that with a gentleman named Jameson Williams. And then 2 years ago, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I bring those two up because those are 1 and 2 right now. But we got to remember something. Yeah, a lot of fans want to pay DJ Chark, and I'm all for it at the price tag you're talking about. But you got to look at term. St. Brown and Williams, St. Brown for sure is going to get paid. And you do not want him leaving. So do you really, as an organization, want to pay your number 3 receiver number 2 or maybe even number $1? You can do that, but only for a short period of time, because when St. Brown needs to re-up, and that could be as early as this offseason after this season, that could be a salary cap issue. So that's what you got to look at too a little bit. And then we're gonna dive into this very shortly, Coach. But there are this class isn't as loaded as the last two. I mean, the last two draft class, I mean, it have been phenomenal. This year is talented, not quite as star-studded. But I'm teasing it a little bit here because, we want to talk about them right now, Coach, and that's why we're here. Let's talk about these wide receivers, Coach. And first of all, we're going to talk about a guy that I know that fans in Michigan are well aware of, and that's Quentin Johnson, the junior out of TCU. Let's talk about him.
Quentin Johnson, 6'4", 212-pound, third-year junior out of TCU. We saw him in the Fiesta Bowl versus Michigan in the college football playoff. A burner and a big frame, Drew. 4.3 speed, extremely athletic. He's really unmatched in his ability to accelerate and then be able to break off into the route tree, which, what they call the route stem, Drew, is where you're going to take your in route, your post, your flag, your hit, your go, your back shoulder throw and comeback throw or stop routes. It's where you make your move, and he can get into that and articulate a certain step with just great fluidity, with great length. And it's, really going to be something that's going to help him separate from defensive backs. Mm-hmm. And it's really unmatched. There's no one quite that does it as well as he does in this draft. He's your classic X receiver, really, that spans now a good 25, 30 year, maybe even 35, 40 year, window of the NFL, where you have your big, long, lanky, 6'3" and above, 200 and above outside receiver. He has that kind of frame. He's an absolute nightmare in zone coverages, just because he can just trigger out of that into his route stem and attack multiple zones, just so easily. It's really, if you're a zone against zone defenses, be aware when Quentin Johnson's going against those in fantasy football, because he is going to gather up some balls. He's really he can be almost untrackable at times in a free release. He just gathers so much ground so quickly and is able to redirect into the route area, the routes out of the route stem so well. Size, speed, and power combo is kind of unmatched in this draft. No one quite like him, Drew.
He is a special talent. He is a definite special talent, Coach. Let's take a look at a clip here from the Oklahoma State game last year. And what I love here is how he goes up for this ball. 2 defenders around him. Thank you very much. I'll take that. Touchdown TCU. And that goes to the kind of battles he wins. Those one-on-one
battles, 50-50 balls.
Absolutely. You can trust Quentin Johnson to go grab a pass like that all day long. He's that good. But there are some issues here, Coach. Let's talk about some of the drawbacks potentially.
Well, and this is actually something that can be said by quite a few prospects, Drew, in this draft, is that they're kind of, not to use the words of Mickey Redmond, but kind of a Johnny-come-lately when it comes to becoming a consistent producer out there. Mm-hmm. Which, in a 3-year cycle, because he's a 3-year player, he's leaving after his junior year. He made it in a competitive program. You're not going to get out there necessarily as a true freshman or start and get substantive time as a sophomore. You may rotate through and get some play as a sophomore, but really your junior year is the year you come to shine. If you think about that, traditionally, that's kind of how it's always been for the star players. Cut their teeth as a freshman, get acclimated as a sophomore, and are big contributors as juniors and seniors. This was just his junior year. So I'm not so sure that's a horrible indictment, but he didn't put up a lot of numbers prior to this year. Struggles and good press man coverage. Now that's an indictment and something that he's going to have to work on. He's going to have to get stronger. He's going to have to, be able to use his hands better and leverage better to get off of that sticky press man coverage. He allows defensive backs just to get inside him. And a guy like a Devin Witherspoon, would just be licking their chops going up against, a Lester Hayes, a Dr. Death in the movie Best of Times. He was all over Quentin Johnson, Drew. Those are the type of guys that really give him problems. And something that he's going to have to work on. And that's a technique that he can improve. Quentin Johnson's really, he is the guy to look at it for that number 1 overall prospect at wide receiver. Not in the draft, but at wide receiver.
He's the total package. I would say he's the guy that has the speed, the athleticism, the football IQ, plus the height to go with it all. He's I mean, we saw it in the playoff, right? I mean, and we saw it during the season. I know we watched a lot of games, especially late in the season. Kind of could see TCU was that team that was gonna swoop in, as long as they held the course, and they did. Very, very good season, great season for that program, and Quentin Johnson was a huge part of it. So, yeah, he's going to look nice in the NFL, but it likely won't be with the Lions, but he's going to look good somewhere. But
yeah,
Coach,
I don't think so. There's people that have rumored him at the 18th pick, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. Would he replace DJ Shark in his role? That's what he would do. And the one thing I've noticed with Quentin Johnson, can he gain ground quick? I mean, he takes up, he can really eclipse some land in a fast period of time. We shall see. I tend to agree with you. I don't think he'll be wearing Honolulu blue and silver, and playing in Ford Field, his home games in Ford Field. But real intriguing prospect. He's going in the first round.
Oh, yeah, and here's another guy that could very well do so again. It's Jordan Addison, the junior out of USC. Let's talk about him, Coach. Great player.
Yeah, Jordan Addison, he is, and he's kind of, he's a little bit of a royalty name. He won the Biletnikoff Award, I believe, as a freshman at Pitt. 6 foot, 175 pounds. He's got, I guess, maybe he's really considered a little bit undersized to the classic XY receivers of the past 30 years. However, we've seen this position transition to, as the offense have become a little bit more speed and space oriented, we've seen this type of body build really kind of what was a prototypical running back's body build at one time, kind of be utilized as a receiver. And that's kind of what Jordan Addison looks like. Think Golden Tate, Drew, and Lions fans and NFL fans, of all ages and types. That's kind of the type of movement skills that he possesses. He transferred from Pitt. He was excellent there with Kenny Pickett. He really was a great blend and mesh fit there. Won the Biletnikoff Award, as mentioned, as the top receiver in the country. Tremendous route runner. Just tremendous route runner and ball skills. A nuanced football player above all else. He gets this game. He gets this position. And I see it even at the high school level all the time. There's kids that just get it. They are not the best athlete on the team, but they are simply the best football player. He has that kind of skill. Mm-hmm. Excellent at changing pace and throwing off the balance of a defender. And that's what Golden Tate was so good at. He could kind of change his pace out there and make things, happen. There's that famous clip where he kind of flips into the end zone over Matt Sandeo of the Vikings, where he had him just so off balance and confused. Jordan Addison can make players do that. He just creates he gets all of his separation through amazing movement in and out of his routes. A lot like the Jerry Jeudy's that we've seen. He's got great hands and has the ability to really accumulate some racker, which is yards after contact or yards after reception. And in this case, yards after reception, and he's really just kind of a nuanced, gifted, creative athlete, and that's really kind of gets him above the rest in many of the prospect rankings.
I love this guy, and we're gonna look at a clip of him right now, Coach. And this was watch this play here, and I know he's a little slight inside, but look at the determination again to the end zone. So even though he's not the biggest guy, he's certainly going to make sure that he's going to get his. Like you said, run after the catch. He's going to fight for some yardage. So I was encouraged by that. I love that clip. He reminds me of Devontae Smith a lot, former Alabama receiver, now with the Philadelphia Eagles. And we had concerns about his size then. He's proven that he can take it because speed kills.
I think you bring up the perfect player comparison. Is Devonta Smith of the Eagles. The Jordan Addison is very, very similar. You saw that RPO concept against Rice. That was the clip that you just showed. And he showed some determination and grit to get across that, the plane there to get the score. He is that kind of person that you get him on angles, you find angles for him to attack and get him the ball, and he's just going to eat up all sorts of space and yardage and score. And he may not win the bench press reps at wide receiver. He may not win the 40. He may not win the vertical. He may not look amazing in the 3-cone, although that would be a good drill for him. Yeah. But I mean, he is just somebody that produces.
Love his speed, love his quickness. Very good. He's an excellent route runner. This is a very talented guy. I think if the Lions were going to go after a number 3 guy and they don't sign and they do not re-sign Chark, this player could very much be in play at 18. There's no question about that. So, Coach, we're going to look at the next gentleman on the list, and that is Jackson Smith-Njigba, the junior out of Ohio State, out of the Ohio State University. We know him very well. Let's talk about him, Coach. What do you like?
Well, built very similarly to our previous prospect, and really some of his, and we'll get into Jackson Smith-Njigba here. He's a little thicker at 198 pounds, but very similar frame, very similar nuanced type of wide receiver to Jordan Addison out of Ohio State. So we have seen him. Another excellent route runner and separation creator through body control and movement, changing pace, those kinds of things, just elite footwork. Where the body control award may go to Addison, the footwork award might go to Smith-Njigba. He's just amazing. He's electrical, in and out of his routes with his footwork. Really intelligent, offensive-minded player, creative, physical player, very similar to Jordan Addison. He's got real good hands, great at the catch point, and competitive on those 50-50 balls. He sees the field very well, like Addison does, finds the space to accumulate yards, real smooth and fluid. Very, very similar prospect to the guy that we mentioned in our previous clip.
Yeah, and let's take a look at him right now. And, of course, we've seen a lot of him. This is from the Rose Bowl against Utah. Now watch this play.
You can see him just gain that separation here on that outside corner. And, that looked like a route where, again, he nuanced him to think that he was probably going inside and going outside and more of like your fade route, go route look. Or he may be coming off of a wheel. I wasn't sure exactly where if he lined up at slot there or not. But, yeah, look at those skills there. Addison and Smith-Njigba also, their I guess, slights are very, very similar too. And we'll speak a little bit more to Addison's here as well. They both lack top elite speed. Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith-Njigba, they're not burners. Johnson's a much more fluid, speedier player. They're not Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman type little guy, speed and space guys. They do this through body nuances and route running. He is very reliant on that technique and that footwork, just like Addison is on his body control. They're not explosive athletes. So can they just take a game over with their physical ability? No, they're not going to be able to do that for you like a Saquon Barkley has, like a Tyreek Hill has. And then we've seen Ezekiel Elliott do it. We've seen Derrick Henry do it. These are just those kinds of athletes. And these are not those type of receivers, but they are going to be extremely productive and high target guys.
I agree, and I don't know if I'm off base here, Coach. I see Johnny Morton here. I see
those type of guys. Yes, very much so.
A very good possession guy. Certainly has the ability to break one. Is rock solid, strong, compact and strong. Will find the sticks, and just makes plays. And imagine Smith-Njigba played with Olave and Wilson 2 years ago, and he played with Harrison Jr. last year. He was hurt last year too, so a little bit. So he got a little dinged up, but he's a super talent. I would say he could go in the late first round, maybe. But I can't see him getting out of the second round. No way. I mean, just too much talent there. And he's a special player, and he's going to be a good NFL player. I like him a lot, Coach. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that, he's definitely one of those 3 or 4 that could be day one receivers.
No question. Let's talk about the next prospect on the list here, and that's Jalen Hyatt of Tennessee, the junior. Real good football player, Coach. What do you like about him?
Well, we talked about Jordan Addison winning that coveted Biletnikoff Award in 2020. Jalin Hyatt won that award in 2022. He was your Biletnikoff Award winner this past season. 6 foot, 175 pounds, mimics the exact frame of Addison. Very similar frame to that of Jackson Smith-Njigba as well. A little bit slighter, but a little bit more lanky and sinewy in frame. Real nimble, fluid athlete. Another just a great nuanced mover, creative, flexible, athletic mover. He has elite speed, unlike Smith-Njigba and Addison. He can blow you out of the water. He has outstanding route running ability himself, which makes him just a tough phase cover. He is kind of the opposite of Quentin Johnson in that you want to cover him in zone. You need to be able to track a player like Jalin Hyatt, at least at the college level, in zone. Press man, he beats one little move. Bye-bye. He's gone. And that's the type of receiver he is. Real good ball tracker. He can make tough downfield catches on deep balls. Real dangerous after the catch with that speed. Jalin Hyatt's a sneaky prospect, Drew. This is a big-time deep ball winner at the catch point. This is a ball player right here. This is a guy that makes big plays.
Like him a lot. Let's take a quick look here at a clip against Alabama. Love the pass by Hooker, too. This is beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, wow. Split the seam. That was some sort of seam route, whether if he was a little post or whatever. But you see him. He was effortless into that aspect of the field. Effortless. Split those two likely professional football players in half. And, that was effortless. So, Jalin Hyatt's played against high caliber competition, too. Like you said, that wasn't Rice that you were showing a clip of. That was Alabama. No,
absolutely.
So that's something to consider as well.
What are your concerns about Hyatt, Coach?
Well, again, yeah, he's not the perfect prospect by any means as well. Almost exclusively an air raid spread concepted player. A lot of his, and that's not to say that he couldn't learn schemes and that's for a receiver it's less important than it is as a running back or a quarterback to have played just in those concepts. But yes, the timing and the routes are going to be a little bit different in most of his pro concepted offenses. He has very, very little pro adaptations to his game. It was almost all in the spread air raid stuff that you see a little bit of in the NFL, but mainly his college and concept. He's slight. He's a slightly built guy. His physicality is going to be a problem. He's not going to be a great blocker. At least initially, he's going to struggle with that aspect of the game. And he's almost produced purely out of the slot. Now, that's also, Jackson Smith-Njigba and Jordan Addison. Are these guys that are going to wind up in the slot right away? Or are they going to be able to be a little bit more scheme diverse and be able to move them around formations? That's the big thing for Jameson Williams is he can play any of these fully scheme diverse. Yep. Jalin Hyatt seems pretty destined for the slot, but we shall see.
I like him a lot, and I think much like Addison, I think if you can keep him in motion, you're going to be in really good shape. He can play, and he could play the slot. I think it's critical though to constantly keep him moving. That way, you take away, for the most part, a cornerback's ability to jam him at the line. Because that's the way you got to beat Jalin Hyatt. Because like you said, if he gets a move on you, good night, it's over. He's so fast. He's sneaky good. He's really sneaky good. And I tell you what, we're gonna hear his name in the NFL for a long time, I think, Coach.
We do. We have a Cadillac version of Jalin Hyatt right now in Jameson Williams. He's just even a little bit, the ceiling's even a little higher for him. But he's a similar type of guy. Very similar.
Gotta be excited about Jalin Hyatt, no question about that. Now let's take a look at the next prospect, and that is another speedster, Zay Flowers, the senior out of BC, Boston College. We don't talk about a lot of BC guys other than maybe some linemen. Chris Lindstrom comes to mind right off the bat. Will Harris comes to mind off the bat, Coach. But Zay Flowers, you like
AJ Dillon,
AJ Dillon.
Yeah, but yeah, the receivers that we don't talk about from the Golden Eagles as much, but real now this is kind of your modern built receiver, 5'10", 172, senior out of Chestnut Hill in Boston. He's the 11th of 14 children.
That's a lot.
Right there. Now, most of us cannot relate to that, but I think most of us could relate to that if we think about just how competitive it is to brush your teeth in that house, to use the bathroom, to eat at the dinner table, to get comfortable, in your bedroom, to get to watch what you want on TV. Think about that. That he was working for that all the time.
Coach, you talk about those kind of battles. Those can be some serious battles.
This is a guy that's going to be urgent in his processes because he's had to just to survive in life. He's one of the back end children of a big family. Tough, competitive kid. Another one of these kids that just has electric moving skills. And when I say this, I encourage all of our viewers and listeners to go on little rabbit holes and watch these guys on YouTube. I know, you've done a great job of queuing up a clip for us, but you can just see you see their movement skills, you see their ability just to run and redirect and to change the pace in which they're doing things. It's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah.
And it's something that kind of could go unnoticed if you aren't looking for it. But he has this, just like a lot of the players that we've highlighted today thus far. Extremely competitive at the catch point. When you're, like I said, you're fighting for that bowl of mashed potatoes, and there's, about something like 26 other hands fighting for those things. You're going to have to be competitive, and he certainly is that. He's really competitive at the catch point for someone that's not 6 feet tall. He gets up off the ground, can make plays off the ground at a higher catch point, which if he's coming down with those type of balls, those are the things that a lot of statisticians and coaches are looking for. Who's winning at the catch point? And Zay Flowers does that sub 6 feet. It's pretty impressive. He again is another one of these kids that attacks defenders with speed and tempo, can change things up, can just kind of bob and weave, almost like a Floyd Mayweather mentality to route running. If that makes any sense, cross over into the boxing, realm. Ball hits his hands in space. He's an absolute highlight reel. He will make people miss. Real high-end athlete, impressive kid, Zay Flowers.
I love the point you make about him, Coach, because when we take a look at this video here, and this is impressive because when you see him, he's on the far right. Up he goes, defender in his face, no problem. Concentration, excellent catch. I mean, that's what you're looking for. A guy that can make the catch under duress, can make the catch a clutch catch. That's what Zay Flowers does. And that didn't even illustrate how shifty and speedy he is. When you can see a guy his stature make a catch like that, you got to like his chances in the NFL.
But what that clip does show us are just elite ball skills. I mean, is that ball to adjust on that? I mean, that's a pro touchdown. Pros ball was thrown kind of safe and behind, on purpose. He was to run with the intention that knowing that ball is going to be thrown to the back shoulder. And, really it was thrown to the back hip, and underneath the back hip, he slides down. Those are those movement skills that we're talking about. We're not talking about moving like, Mikhail Baryshnikov in the Russian ballet. That's beautiful movement too, right? It is. But we're talking about even in being able to redirect and do some things that are not dissimilar to that, but right there. That was also that finite, be able to slide down and make that catch. A lot of people just can't do that. They are not going to be able to get their body redirected down to make that play. That was exceptional.
It is very difficult to catch any ball under duress like that, or having anything in your face. It's very difficult to do, and he makes it look easy. But there are some issues here with Zay Flowers. What do you see, Coach?
Well, he's 5'10", 172. That frame is extremely limited. And I remember like one of the first sports sciences they ever did on like when Fox Sports was running those, and then ESPN. I think it was Fox Sports that were running those.
They were, yes.
Like Calvin Johnson was one of the very first ones. He was one of the very first sports sciences. He was like a rookie or in his second year of the Lions, and he had like the catch radius of like a 2.5 car garage. It was amazing. Your average to code 2.5 car garage in the state of Michigan. They showed it or something. It was amazing. Zay Flowers, unfortunately, doesn't have that type of catch radius. He's much more limited. You saw an amazing play right there, but even to that was still a good throw too, folks. That was a really good throw on that touchdown you saw there, and he had to make a pretty spectacular movement on the ball. So that catch radius is pretty limited. You're going to have a real accurate quarterback to make Zay Flowers the most impact he can for your offense. He dropped the ball a lot. He dropped the ball out. Now he was targeted a lot too, but he did have a fair number of drops. And again, very much like Jalen Hyatt, are we talking about just a slot here? Because this is a tiny, tiny guy. This is somebody that's a speed and space type receiver. Can he play X or Y and go out there and stretch the field for you too? That's a question mark.
Yeah, and with Zay Flowers, there's a high ceiling. But then I also see Tavon Austin, nice player, but didn't really become really a solid receiver. He kind of became a gimmicky type guy, lot of end arounds, a lot of reverses. So that's the concern. But I agree with you. Even though he does have the drops, we also see he can concentrate too. So I want to do personally a little more research on him because I want to see when those drops occurred. Are we looking upfield too soon? Because we can see he can catch it, he can concentrate, but it almost seems I'd like to see where those are occurring because that's something you can coach up, right? I mean that if a guy can make a catch under get a 50-50 ball or whatever or be under duress, a guy should be able to take that extra half second to see the ball in before they turn upfield, right?
Absolutely. And do guys get caught, kind of staring out in front and not and completely, not seeing the ball into the track point? Yeah, that happens. And I'm sure he's guilty of a couple of receptions like that. Just what, a drop too. There could be some balls that are tougher to catch and balls that are kind of thrown in the area where you're kind of having to keep your head up because, you're going to be taking some impact too. Those are considered drops often as well. So sometimes, it's not necessarily just this gimme, drop that is just absolutely catastrophically horrible play necessarily. It can be a tough play not made as well sometimes. So, yeah, taking a look at those kinds of things. But at that size point, he's not going to have a lot of room for error for drops.
I see Zay Flowers as a day two guy, probably late day two.
Yep.
But I can't imagine he slips. If he slips out, then there's concerns about the whether he can physically hold up or not, or whether he's going to be that guy only is taking 10 snaps or 15 snaps as a special teams ace. I mean that's the difference right there. So I got to think Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be his day two guy, to be honest. Still, so we got another one. We got another prospect we want to highlight, Coach, and that's Kayshon Boutte out of the junior out of LSU, and it is Booty. I looked up. I looked it up.
Oh yeah. You want to want to look at those highlights and hear his name called a few times just to verify. But yeah, Kayshon Boutte is a 6 foot, 185-pound third-year junior. We've seen this body type, over and over and over at the top end of our prospect list. And if you look, into some of our, dark horses and other prospects, you're going to see it again too. He has that very similar speed and space, kind of modern build for a receiver. They want a guy that's exceptional mover. They want somebody that's going to be dynamic in their movement skills and something else when they catch after the football. Kayshon Boutte is exactly that. He set the single game receiving yards record as a true freshman, as an 18-year-old for LSU. He had 308 yards against Ole Miss in one game. I mean, so this is a kid that was, people were just thinking he was going to be something else.
And then, Coach, we talked about wide receiver prospects. This is a school that has produced Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase over the last couple of years. And
another guy by the name of DJ Shark.
Yeah, exactly. But Kayshon Boutte is oh my gosh, that against Ole Miss too. That's impressive.
Yeah. So I mean, he's yet this another one of these receivers coming out of Louisiana State that's just exceptional. A top end, yards after the catch guy. Just tremendous performer after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of production, both outside and inside. So this is a guy that's a pretty nuanced, scheme diverse prospect, which is good to see because some of these other guys have really kind of been movement receivers coming out of the slot primarily. He's done a little bit of both. Real elusive. He can create a lot of misses. He can create a lot of whiffs in the open field. He's done so quite a bit throughout his career. Strong and fast, and he's capable of just burning past the secondary. He's a big gain weapon. He's had some monster games in his college career. This is a receiver that could jump in front of a lot of the prospects that we've talked about.
Yeah, and let's take a look quick, Coach, at a clip here right here, and I think that's against Mississippi State.
That's against Alabama.
Alabama, I apologize, even better. But yep. I mean, just speed kills. And here's another one against Florida.
You can see him just roll past a zone cover. That was out of zone coverage. He knew exactly where he needed to be, and that was not going to be defended. And in that clip against Alabama was very similar. Another kid, like Jordan Addison, like Jackson Smith-Njigba, that can, and like Jalen Hyatt, that knows where to find space. And is creative that way, and he has done a ton of damage in that regard.
So again, another prospect who can, again, like you said, create space, good speed, but there are some concerns. What are we talking about?
Just like a lot of these players, and we had alluded to this at the beginning of the episode. Excuse me. A lot of their weaknesses are very similar. He's another guy that's going to have a fairly limited catch radius. He's 6 foot 185 and is not going to wow you with his ability to redirect, get off the ground, pluck something with extremely long arms away from his body type of catch. It's going to need to be in and around a pretty tight catch point for Kayshon Boutte to be able to make a play on things. He has to be more urgent as an outside receiver. And I think that's where some concern is, that sometimes he lacks urgency on the outside. He just doesn't quite seem to be able to get in the areas he needs to as well as he can when he's coming out of a movement alignment or out of the slot in of itself. So that's something that's kind of, I notice that he does not produce as much, doesn't seem to be as open as much as an outside receiver. He also suffered some drops on some pretty easy catches. Again, when you put up that kind of production like you do as a freshman in a game, you're going to be kind of the go-to guy, which means you're going to have some drops. Drops are going to happen. But we talked about Justin Jefferson. We talked about Odell Beckham. Some of these other LSU product receivers that are so amazingly successful at the catch point. That's where Kayshon Boutte may have struggled a little bit more in his career as compared to some of those players. DJ Shark's a catch point whiz. That's his thing. Is on those up, a high catch point, 50-50 type ball. He makes those plays. Yeah. Kayshon Boutte does more so in speed and space, not so much at the catch point.
I like him. I think he's a safer pick because he has a higher floor than Flowers and Hyatt. However, not as electric, to your point. But a very solid receiver. I think a team that needs a number 2 would probably want to get a Kayshon Boutte on day 2. But I could see him going in the 4th round because I'm seeing what I see as Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm not comparing them skill wise, but I'm seeing
Player type.
Yeah, exactly. And realistically, I think he could be a very successful NFL receiver, possibly a 900, 1,000 yard guy in the right situation. Right. So I think there's a lot of upside for Boutte. But, Coach, we got a few others we want to talk about here before we wrap this one up. And look at this. We're getting high tech. We got color-coded stuff. We're on YouTube now, Coach. What next? What next? But let's talk about some other prospects here. Couple from the home state of Michigan, but let's see, who do you like?
Well, I think someone that's going to come off the board pretty early is Josh Downs out of North Carolina. Very similar build to Flowers, very similar play style to Flowers. He could be someone that is even drafted ahead of him. Now, if you're looking for a bigger prospect, Rashee Rice out of Southern Methodist, SMU down in Dallas, 6'3", 206. He's got more of that body type that we're talking about. So does Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. He was the big time X receiver where Jalen Hyatt was used more of as a movement option. Cedric Tillman was 6'3", 215. Another guy with more of that bigger prototypical body type for the outside. Marvin Mims has been a highly productive guy out of Oklahoma. He's another speed and space slot-oriented type receiver at 5'11", 177. And Jaden Reed, both Western Michigan and Michigan State product. This guy just makes people miss. I'm all about him. If we somehow are in need of drafting a receiver or want to draft a receiver on day 3 or very late day 2 with acquired talent, Jaden Reed would be somebody that'd be really fun to get here.
Highly skilled.
Xavier Hutchinson, another prototypical size, 6'3", 210-pounder out of Iowa State. Then we go see another series of the more speed and space guys. I know I've said that probably a million times, but Tyler Scott, Tank Dell, slot-oriented movement receivers, guys that you're going to put in motion, you're going to move around formations and do different things with and get them open. Charlie Jones, that kid is just an absolute vacuum. That kid is a catch machine for Purdue. He was something else to watch as they played in the Big Ten championship game against Michigan. He was something else. That kid just catches the football. I can see him look really good in Foxborough, Massachusetts. He's that type of receiver that they love there. And then kind of a unique, like I said, a dark horse. We got to talk about these guys that may not even get drafted, but but really are intriguing prospects. Andre Iosiavas is 6'4", 200-pounder out of Princeton. So he's a non-scholarship, but he is athletic. I watched clips, and yes, it was Ivy League football, but he is a down-the-field plucker. He can come underneath. He can do all sorts of different things, and out of the modern pro route stem, he's going to get a shot. Is Iosiavas? Sorry, I screwed that up. I hyped it too much, Drew. And then the guy that who's beloved here in our state, who really is very much an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of player, Ronnie Bell, 6 foot, 192-pound, 2-time captain out of U of M, absolute stud. And a guy that reminds me and a lot of others of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And Ronnie Bell, I believe he'll be drafted. I believe he'll be day 3. But at the same time, he's also playing on a team at Michigan that is very much run first now and has been for the last few years. So when you look at that production, you got to take that into account a little bit. But this is a very talented receiver, and I know, Coach, when we've watched a lot of football for U of M and Michigan State, and a couple gems right there. Loved Reed at Western. Was bummed he left, but got to do what you got to do, right? They're both going to be good pros. They're definitely both going to be good pros. Overall, Coach, a great job as always. But with this receiver class, we talked about it. There's a couple guys at the top. Quentin Johnson certainly stands out as a guy that's going to be pretty damn good in this league. But I think there's they're very talented receivers. But like you said, there's a lot of a lot of them seem to have the same physical limitations. And then you have some guys that are 6'3", 6'4", which is nice. But we don't have a Calvin Johnson in this draft, but then again, you don't have a Calvin Johnson in a lot of drafts, right? So I'm excited about the group. I don't think it's a bad group at all. It's just not as star-studded as the last couple of years, and I think that's why people aren't as excited about this group as a whole.
No, I think, are there Pro Bowlers in this draft, in this draft cycle? Yes, there are. There'll be probably players that become an All-Pro too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many just golden jacket types that are just popping out of this draft, or guys that you could just say first rounder. That it's not that draft. However, there's so many players that are so similar in so many ways. Just amazing athletes with great agility, understanding of their position, understanding of offensive scheme, just your highly technical receivers with outstanding body control and footwork and movement. It is a great class up for sure.
Talented players, and we look forward to the draft certainly. But thank you, Coach, for your analysis. Again, great job. Folks, thank you for watching and listening. Remember to like us and subscribe us, please. We appreciate your support, and we want to keep bringing you good draft content, good sports content focused on the state of Michigan. So for Coach Andy Scheel of the Marine City Mariners, my name is Drew. Folks, take care and have a good evening, and we will talk to you soon.